Oh, that's Mike feedback. Hang on. Yeah, we got some mic issues going on with Keegan here, so he'll get that figured out real quick. And then we'll get going here. But welcome back, guys. This is episode 4 of the Pat's Pulpit Mock Draft Show. I am Ryan Kieran. That is Keegan Stiefel. I am very unprepared today, so we are getting everything set up as we go here. But it's been a big week. That's why I'm unprepared, because it's been such a crazy week. So let's we'll talk all about it. So,
how do we sound?
Unfortunately, yeah, it sounded a lot better. Cool. Unfortunately, Spags couldn't be with us tonight, and I'll be right back in a second. So to get dark here quick, but Spags won't be here tonight. But it's just me and Keegan. But we're gonna cover everything that's happened this week. We're gonna recap it if you guys missed it on Monday. Spags, myself, Pat Lane, and Brian Phillips talked about the day one stuff. Obviously, a lot has happened since then. We kind of avoided talking about how that might impact the draft and the rest of the Patriots offseason. We're going to get into that here. And then we're, of course, going to do the mock draft. It's going to be another one-round mock draft. We're doing trades just like we did last week. And this week we're highlighting edge players. So if you're new to the stream for the first time, how these work is we're going to decide the picking order. It's just 2 of us tonight as opposed to the usual 3, as I said. But we're going to choose the picking order, and then we are going to pick for each team. So this week it'll be evens and odds. So if you get the first overall pick, you're picking for the Patriots and every other team that picks in the odd spots. If you get the even pick, same thing. The trades will work out where whichever teams we're picking for, we own that. We're controlling that team. So if I pick first and Keegan picks second, and he wants to trade up, the Jets trade up 1 pick to get Trevor Lawrence instead of Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, I'm going to tell him no, because I'm just going to take Trevor Lawrence. But he would control that, and I'd be in charge of negotiating for the Jaguars if that's something I was interested in. If I have the Dolphins and the Lions, for example, and I want to make a trade, I'm just negotiating against myself. I might bounce ideas off Keegan to make sure it's not insane or anything like that. But that's how that would work. And then each week we highlight a different position group. Week 1 was quarterbacks. Week 2 was wide receivers. And week 3 was what we do last week?
Linebackers.
Linebackers, thank you. That's right. And then this week we're going to highlight edge rushers. So if you're looking for some in-depth analysis on the first round and borderline first round picks of those positions, be sure to go back and check out past week's streams. Otherwise, let's get into it. Keegan, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. I'm excited. I think nothing is going to be the same. There will be same picks, but the reasoning and everything like that has changed. So should be fun.
Yeah, and it's too bad Spags isn't here, because he has been all over a certain trade-up scenario that it's definitely been popular among the past Twitter over the past couple of days. But Spags was the first person I saw tweet about it. I think it's something that makes a lot of sense, so we'll have to definitely at least bring it up in his honor. But before we get going here tonight, let's with the draft, let's talk about what we've seen. So again, Spags and I got to talk about kind of our day one thoughts on Monday night. Keegan, we haven't heard from you yet, so let's start there. What were your thoughts when they were just making signing after signing on day one?
It's a little unbelievable. Like it's nothing that we've ever. Hell yeah, brother! It's nothing that we've ever seen before.
Represent.
Like Belichick's never done this specifically. He's made moves and he's made the occasional splash signing, but in a 7-hour period, he went and signed the 2 best tight ends, which could be argued was the worst position group on the team. He made a couple wide receiver moves, and even though they weren't super flashy, they were hell of a lot better than what you have on the roster right now. Made a splash for an edge rusher, which never happens.
Right.
Just things that we don't see, but he's very clearly ready to change things. What's been going on. He's ready to move everything into the right direction, and I guess he felt the best way of doing that was to go spend a ton of money. And as the contracts have come out and the numbers and everything, he didn't really spend all that much money. They still,
Right.
28 million left in cap space.
Mm-hmm.
They need to save a couple.
Realistically closer to 20 million, because there's some deals that haven't been accounted for. But yeah, absolutely.
Right. So you save a few. I think you only need 2.5 for your sign your draft class.
Yep.
Need 5, 6 probably for in-season moves. So you've got $10 million, realistically speaking. There are moves to be made.
Yep.
And we've all heard about the wide receiver market, and I think things are moving in that direction soon. I think every other position we've seen multiple signings. There have been a couple receivers, and I think they're all going to the Patriots so far. So we'll see. There are moves to be made. I'm not like an insider. I don't know that, but I'm damn positive that's the way that things are going to go.
So if you look at what they've done in the past, and shout out Brian Phillips for this, we were talking about it in some DMs. If you look at the past few years, they've typically, past Cap might have gotten a similar tweet out. They've typically gone into seasons at around $10 million. They really need like $5 to $6 million, but when they're spending their money, they're usually taking like $5 to $6 or $10 million into the start of the season. So when you factor in, I think it's just under 3 million, about like 2.9 that they need for their draft picks, plus any trade ups, trade downs. That changes the number somewhat. But right now it's at 2.9 million. So if you think that we'll say they're around 20 million right now, once details of the deals they've already made come out, that it gives them about $7 million to play with for the rest of the offseason, which the way they're structuring cap hits is plenty. You can make one more big move. You can make 2 or 3 more smaller moves. You can restructure Dante Hightower, as Nick is asking about here, or restructure Patrick Chung. Cut Patrick Chung is something that I don't think would be a shock, given the Jalen Mills contract. There's plenty of ways that they can still come up with more money, and they still have more money to spend. I think the biggest indicator today is a report came out where AJ Green signed with the Cardinals, and they apparently beat the Patriots out to sign AJ Green. So they're not done at wide receiver, which I kind of thought they would be. They were still talking to AJ Green well after they signed their two Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne on Monday. So I think that, we still have a few probably significant dominoes to fall. I think they could still use one more linebacker. They could sign 7 wide receivers, and I wouldn't say it's enough after last season. And I think they're in a great shape. They got their starting center filled out. Obviously, it looks like we're going to lose David Andrews, but Ted Karras is a more than capable backup. He's already proven that in a season where he wasn't expected to be the starter. So now he's going to go in expecting to be the starter. I have no concerns there.
Yeah, they still have moves to make. Just kind of in the roster filling out standpoint, like that they're thin at linebackers still. Like real linebackers, they've got a ton of the guys who can play. They can move back and play safety and kind of move around a little bit, but they don't have a ton of real linebackers. They need to fill in the interior defensive line, just because a lot of the guys that they have at that spot right now aren't NFL players. I don't think there's a lot of guys who came up from the practice squad last year, kind of got a chance, but they're not the kind of guys you want on a roster if you're going to actually compete. You need more. I think you need more receivers. You need interior offensive linemen. You've got the 3 starters and 1 backup, and that's what you've got in the middle. So there are a lot of moves to be made, and I think the best way, or the best way of going about it, is to do it through the draft. So I know as we get later into these, we're going to do a full Patriots mock draft, but I think their board has changed significantly from the last 3 days.
Yep, and we'll get into that in just a second. There's a couple more points I wanted to hit on. As of today, they have, I think Ted Karras got added, so they probably have 13 spots left on their roster. They currently have 9 draft picks. They like to sign undrafted free agents. So if you're looking at maybe they make all those picks and they sign 2 undrafted free agents, you're looking at like 3 more spots. I don't think they're only going to make 3 more free agent signings. I think that they're still set up to make those patented, like, week into free agency. Sorry, hang on.
Yeah, just to
wasn't gonna let that keep going back. Maya, knock it off. That is my dog freaking out over nothing. Stop it. All right, sorry about that, guys. So that is I just completely lost my train of thought over that. They got about 13 spots left. So, and they still have moves that I think they're going to make, more patented classic Patriots free agent moves. So if you're kind of looking at that, you're thinking either there's going to be cuts to be made, or they're not really spreading those small moves out. They're going to make another big one because the spots are starting to fill up. Whether that is a big one in free agency or a big one in the draft, and this is something that Spags hit on a lot, where he thinks that these moves are setting up to be a big trade up in round, setting them up comfortably to be able to make a big trade up in round 1 for a quarterback. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think if you look at the collection of moves and there's 3 scenarios. They sit at 15, they trade up, or they trade back. I think trade up is like way ahead of the pack in terms of those other 2. I don't think they were ever going to stay at 15. I think that's like a wasteland for the first round of the draft, kind of right there in the middle, unless somebody falls. So I don't think they were ever going to stay at 15. And right now, trading back, all that does is give you more draft picks and kind of more shots at the middle of the road guys, and they've got a ton of them right now, and they don't have a ton of roster spots, so they're not going to trade back and then look to cut a bunch of people and then draft you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not going to make all of these different moves. I think they've got a few moves left that they're looking to make, and I would be shocked if they don't make a move to jump up at least a few spots. Maybe they're hoping that a quarterback falls, but I think they're going to jump up at least a few spots.
So let's address this real quick since it popped up. Any chance we get Watson? A report came out today that they could still be dark horse contenders for Deshaun Watson. I still have a hard time believing it realistically. That's still far and away option 1 at quarterback that they've had since they had the opportunity to draft Lamar. Also, he has some legal stuff pop up today. There hasn't been enough coming out on that I want to talk about that yet, but just be aware if you weren't already that it's there. I think that realistically, assuming the legal stuff isn't so much of an issue that he becomes unacquirable. I think that there's no realistic way that the Patriots win a bidding war. And I think that there are other teams that can outbid them that are enticing enough to Deshaun Watson that he wouldn't say, I'm only coming to New England. I think that there's plenty of other teams that can outbid them that would be, even if New England's his top choice, there's no way that they would be his only choice, in my opinion. So there's no reason.
The 2 teams that were on his original kind of like trade destination list are San Francisco and Miami. Those 2 teams can outbid the hell out of you. Like they've got so many more assets, I guess you would say, to give Houston. And I know it's nice for Patriots fans to believe that the relationship between Belichick and Nick Caserio is enough. It's not. It's not enough. This guy just took a horrible job, and he's got, he's not in the best situation right now. He's not going to go and do a favor for a friend. That's right. Just not the situation they're in.
I think that I don't want to come off as an original take here. I've seen it a few times, different times on Twitter, and I completely agree with it. I think if anything, it hurts the case there. That's a tough optic to sell to a fan base if you just turn around and trade your franchise quarterback to the team that you spent your whole career with.
Exactly.
Even if he's forcing his way out, I think most Houston fans, at least that I've seen, understand why he's forcing his way out. I don't think obviously there's some that are never going to forgive him for it, but I think they get it. But I do think it's a real tough sell both to your ownership group and to your fans if you just turn around and sell Deshaun Watson for anything less than an absolute haul to the team that you just came from. And again, there's no way that they're going to be the highest bidder for him unless they just go insane to the point that you almost have to question if it's worth it. So
right.
It's still option A, but it's always been like a 0.5% chance. So you don't hold your breath there. We've had a couple questions on Fields and Lance here, so we'll get to those once we start the mock draft a little bit. But for now, just final thoughts on free agency to this point. We gave grades on Monday night. I'd like to amend mine, but I'd like to hear your initial grade first.
I think I won't give them an A yet because I think the number one need that they had was getting a number one wide receiver. They don't have that yet. Nelson Aguilar is not a number one. Kendrick Bourne, as much as I like him, he's not a number one. Right. Those moves aren't moving anybody up to be a number one. So I still think that the biggest need that they had, they haven't addressed fully. So I'll give them a B+. They're very close to an A, but you've got that move to be made. So We'll see.
I gave them a B, a borderline B-, but the positivity that Spags, Pat, and Brian were spewing on Monday night pushed me up to a B. I would bump up after the Hunter Henry signing. I think everything made a lot more sense. I don't think anyone saw them going out and getting both top tight ends on the market. The idea was maybe 2 wide receivers, maybe a tight end and a wide receiver, maybe just one and none, which is what it seemed like on Monday night after they made 7 big free agent signings. You don't expect an 8th to come in the next morning. But I think with Hunter Henry in the fold, everything makes a lot more sense. They're going back to the prime Gronk and I forget the other guy's name. Days where those
Algie
are kind
Crumpler, I
of
think maybe.
Yeah. Those are options. Martellus Bennett. Those are options A and B in the offense. And then if Edelman can regain his form, that opens up a spot for him. There's just, regardless of the wide receiver talent, there's just no way that you can focus on the one guy anymore, because on any given play, there's two guys that create mismatches right in the middle of the field this way. So Nelson Aguilar as your quote unquote wide receiver one, I still don't like the contract that he got, but it fits in a lot better. Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers and Julian Edelman next to each other around that fits in a lot better, because you can't just sit up front, because now you have mismatches who can take the top off. Nelson Aguilar helps with that deep as well. So I would bump up to a B plus there, even though in a vacuum, I don't love the Hunter Henry contract for a guy who's had trouble staying healthy in the past. And I think, is getting a bit overpaid because it's free agency. But as Brian likes to say, that's what happens when you're building your team through free agency, you overpay for players. I think that they had a clear vision. As of Monday night, that vision wasn't fully clear. With the Hunter Henry signing, all the pieces fell into place. So
yeah, and it's not lost on me that like the offense is not going to be the same that it was last year, with the two tight ends and everything like that. But if you look at that 11 team and kind of what everybody thinks they're building it based off of, they had the two tight ends. Now they have the two tight ends. They had an Aguilar type in, I guess, Ocho Cinco, you could call it, the guy who could stretch the field. He didn't do that, but
the idea of it.
The idea of it, they had like the Brandon Lloyd type on the other side. Like I guess you would throw Myers and Bourne. They're kind of that mold of receiver. Who's your Welker? Like 36-year-old Julian Edelman's not your Welker. He's not the number one guy who's gonna kind of make everything work. They don't have that guy.
Right.
It's nice to think, two tight ends, they're gonna run the ball down your throat. You need that guy, and they don't have it right now. So
yeah, I wouldn't say that they need another wide receiver. I think that adding one of these top tier guys, Will Fuller's always been my guy. I think he still fits. Juju Smith-Schuster was kind of the lowest of those tiers that I was on, but for this specific team, he's now jumped up because I think he fits the most. If you have one of those guys, this offense is legitimately, very good. We both believe in Cam Newton, so we won't argue if Cam's good, if Cam's not. We believe in him, so we're gonna operate under that assumption that he's gonna be what we would expect him to be with the proper weapons around him.
Just real quick while you're doing that.
Just make sure there's no breaking news.
Yeah, I just want to check on, I've seen this, Fournette and then possibly Carson. There haven't been any rumors like there was with Fournette. I think if they're going to sign one of those guys, it's got to be Carson, because he can actually catch the ball out of the backfield, and that's what you need right now. You don't need a thumper right now. You've got two of them.
You don't need a running back, really, period, one that's actually going to carry the ball. You need a James White replacement. Might already be on the roster with J.J. Taylor. There's no way that he's the only one on the roster. I would still expect Rex Burkhead to be back at some point. That helps there, but they've always used him as more than just a pass catcher anyway. He's like a change of pace back in every sense of the term. He's kind of the backup in both roles and their primary pass blocker on third downs at the running back position.
And I think, sorry, not to be morbid or anything, but the fact that he's in his like early to mid 30s and he's coming off an ACL helps them out, because you're going to get him for like a vet minimum. No one's going to touch that guy who hasn't been in their system already. So,
completely
not the worst thing for him.
Yeah. So if they're going to add a wide receiver or a running back, it's either going to be like a bargain bin pass catching type guy. I don't even know who's available in free agency off the top of my head like that, but it's going to be one of those guys, or it's going to be in the draft, that late day 2, early day 3, Shane Vereen, James White type period of back. That's what I would put all my money on. When we get to the Patriots centric mock drafts later in the series of this show, I'm going to be pounding the table like round 4 that's what's going to happen there.
Demetric Felton, remember the name,
right? Exactly. So Lev Bell popped up. I really would be surprised if they sign anyone who has really any value. Like I would anticipate like a late March. Like if it's a name that you've consistently heard of as like a high level starter at any point before, I would probably cross them off. I'm thinking like a late March, early April. Always been a pass catching running back, maybe potentially under like a J.D. McKissick type from last year. He's still under contract, but that's just the name that popped into my head. that type of running back where the name doesn't pop out, but he might be productive for a year because historically when they draft that pass catching running back, they don't really produce that first year. Shane Vereen and James White followed the same path. They kind of had the veteran guy to lead into it. So unless James White ends up coming back, they won't have that this year. So maybe you see a late signing and a draft pick.
I wrote something
goes in this year.
Yeah, I wrote something recently about this. I'm sorry, it's St. Patrick's Day. It's my only green hat. I have to have the Devil's hat on. I don't have a Celtics hat. Anyways, I wrote something recently about this. They have Taylor on the roster, and he kind of didn't really do much last year. He had more touches and more yards than James White did in his rookie year.
Right.
And then look what James White did. He came out. I mean, Lewis was there in 15, but they kind of shared that role. I would not have a problem with, specifically in this offense, having J.J. Taylor play that role, just because it's not – I don't think it's going to be as important a role as it was. So, and if they believe in him, why not?
Yeah. And people forget James White was, like, bad when he first came out. It really wasn't until the playoff run in Atlanta where he managed to really – that whole playoffs he really kind of elevated, and then it went from there. Duke Johnson is still ended up reworking his contract. He's staying with the Texans, by the way. But, all right, I think we've done enough free agency talk. Let's get into the point of the show, the mock draft. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to spin the picker wheel like always. Spags isn't here, so it's a little bit easier one. Whoever it lands on is going to get the first overall pick, which also means they get the Patriots pick, and the other one will pick the evens. Keegan. All right, so Keegan, you're going to pick first overall here, and then you also get the Patriots pick later on the line, so keep that in mind if you're looking at a trade up for a potential quarterback. But here we go. So you have the first pick, and a reminder to everyone, we're going to be highlighting edge rushers tonight, so anytime an edge is picked, we'll stop, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about those guys. But you are on the clock.
It will never change. It will always be this person. Trevor Lawrence is the number one pick of the 2021 NFL Draft.
It's easy. We're just going to get right on to pick 2 here. And I want to make things a little spicy, and I want to kind of push us in a certain direction tonight. So if I were making this pick, it's Justin Fields. When I did get to make this pick a few weeks ago, I ran to the table with Justin Fields. I'm going to take Zach Wilson here. And just because I think that the other 2 quarterbacks still available are a little bit more interesting given who the Patriots currently have as starting quarterback and who they might want to trade up for and try to learn from that guy. So Zach Wilson's going to be my pick at 2, and you're back on the clock with the Dolphins here.
Pal, we're on the same wavelength. That's exactly where I would have went. So the Dolphins, I think the most likely scenario that they have is they trade back or they trade out for an existing player on another roster. Whether that be a guy like Deshaun Watson or not, who knows. But I think they trade back. And I think the best scenario for them is with the Carolina Panthers at number 8, who you have. Right. So let's talk trade.
All right. Real quick, let's pull up the trade machine and let's get the Dolphins up here. Let's get the Panthers up here. And so obviously 3 and 8 would be involved. We did something similar last week, right? And I don't remember exactly where we landed, but I would imagine that the Panthers would need to give up their 2 this year.
Seconds, maybe?
Yeah, 2 this year and next year. I think it's probably something that would need to happen. I believe we wanted to do a first, a second this year, and then a first next year, but the Panthers, the AI Panthers declined that, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So let's try that again. Let's see if we can, because I think 2 firsts and a second is a more realistic offer here. So let's see if we can get the Panthers to accept that first. All right, cool. Yeah. So I think that's a more realistic deal, and the Panthers move up here. I'm on board with this as well because I think this is a realistic deal. As you mentioned, they're interested in Deshaun, but if it's not Deshaun, then this is the spot. Brian's out here saying I think you all need to jump Carolina, and I completely agree. But you can't do that if they're gonna trade. I can't imagine Miami trading up with the Patriots here. So the Panthers are going to get up to 3 here. They're going to take the quarterback that I'm higher on, as is my pick now, and that's going to be Justin Fields. I think all current reports. Obviously, it's still early March. We're a month and a half out from the draft. We got 6 more weeks of this, folks. But all the reports right now seem to be that Justin Fields might end up being quarterback 4 in this class, which is absolutely insane to me because he's like. a half step behind Trevor for me. And then the
very
other two guys
clearly
are
number
like a
2 for both of us.
full step behind him, at least. It's insane to me that Justin Fields is trending this way. In any other class, he's like a runaway quarterback, like first overall pick. I think that this draft, arguably the Myles Garrett draft, and then arguably the Andrew Luck draft. Those are the only 3 drafts in the past decade where Justin Fields isn't the first overall pick if he came out. So I think the Panthers come up. They failed to get Deshaun Watson, so they're going to take Justin Fields, and I think they're going to be just as happy for it. And now I'm on the clock at 4, and here's where I want to talk to you about New England, because I think this is the range that you're going to have to get up to if you're gonna reliably make a move. Maybe you get lucky and one of these guys falls to 7, depending on the pricing that we're thinking here. Maybe we see how that plays out, but this is the first place that I would expect the Patriots to call if they're looking to make a trade up. So I have the Falcons. You have the Patriots. Is this a spot that you're looking to get up to?
Originally it wasn't, but like, let's talk shop. I think this is, like you said, this is probably where they need to get up to. In my mind, I think Detroit has their eyes set somewhere other than quarterback right now. But let's talk 4, because realistically, where I had them in mind, it would take a miracle for Lance to fall that far. So, let's talk 4. What do you think the Patriots need to give up for 4?
All right, let's pull this up. And while I'm pulling this up, I just want to kind of explain my thought process there too. If the best case scenario is that the top 3 picks all make their pick, because 2 quarterbacks are going to go top 2. If the Dolphins then also make their pick there, like Jamar Chase, that really doesn't make sense to them, because they can pretty safely kind of get back to like here 8 where we came back and still have a player that they like in place if a team wants to trade up there. And then if they make this trade back, you wouldn't expect them really to trade back again. They already pick at 18, so they don't really need to get back into the middle of the first. They still want that top tier type of guy. So you're looking at, pick 4 is the Falcons. They could go quarterback. They could trade back with a team who wants a quarterback. That's why we're talking here. If they don't go it, the Bengals are probably need to just take Penei Sewell at this point with how their free agency's played out. The Eagles are a bit of a wild card, both for a trade back or taking a quarterback themselves. I agree with you that the Lions, and then if the Panthers don't trade up, that's where the Panthers pick. You get to 9, 10, 11, you're looking at teams like San Francisco who might not need a quarterback, but they might see the value falling in for a trade up there. So I think the floor the Patriots can get up to is 7, and I think you need to start talking to teams as soon as 4. So let's talk about it here. We got the Patriots, we got the Falcons. Obviously, 4 and 15 would be involved. I'm negotiating on behalf of the Falcons, so I'm just going to say right off the bat, I need at least 2 and next year's 1, and that might not be enough for me.
Yeah, I think it would need to be, swap the 1s plus another 1 and 2 2s. That's what I think it would need to be.
Fully on board with that. I have a hard time seeing the Patriots giving up both second-round picks in consecutive years, so let's maybe make it a 2023 too. And then the Falcons have 3 fifth-round picks, so I could see them asking for like 1 back. So this is the trade that we have in place right now is the Falcons send 4 and a 5th-round pick. The Patriots send 15, 46, next year's 1, and 2023's second-round pick. Real quick, since we are a Patriots podcast, chat, how would you feel about that? 15, 46, 2022 first-round pick, 2023 second-round pick. We would be going up and getting Trey Lance. The top 3 quarterbacks are already off the board here. If you don't like Trey Lance as much, pretend that Justin Fields fell. Pretend that Zach Wilson fell. Don't pretend Trevor Lawrence fell because that's not going to happen. But pick your favorite quarterback. Pretend that this one is here. This is the deal. This is what you're looking at to get up to 4. Are you on board with that? Give you guys a second to put that in the chat. We got Chad Moulton saying whatever it takes for sure. For Lance. Honestly, a little much for 4th. I don't think it's a little bit. But let's here while we let the chat kind of come in. I'm going to pull something up real quick. Seems like a lot. Keegan, if you can look at the comments as they come in real quick. I'm just gonna pull something.
Yeah, I definitely do feel like it's a lot. But as Sonny Cubs says, it's not too much if your franchise guy is there. If you believe that's your franchise guy, that's not too much at all. So, people are higher on Wilson, people are higher on Fields. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. This is obviously an exercise. So if your quarterback's there, if one of your 3 through 4 is there, I don't think this is too much to get there. Specifically, if you look at what they've done with the roster already. So if you're pairing it with the roster now, not the roster from 4 days ago.
All right, let me pull this on screen right here. This is past Pulpit's own Rich Hill's value chart. It's a little bit tough for you guys to see, but the 4th overall pick, according to Rich Hill's chart, is worth 491 points. The Patriots' first 2 rounds this year are worth about 450. When you get into future picks, you need to cut that value like in at least half, because you're not, you have no clue where that's going to be. For example, let me pull that back up for a second. The 32nd overall pick is worth a little under 200 points. A second round pick in 2023, that might be where that value kind of tips over the edge towards Atlanta. But if you're talking a second 2 years out, you're not really getting much value there. And where the draft pick value falls short, or chart falls short, is it doesn't account for the type of player you're coming up to get. You're going up to the 4th overall pick to get your franchise quarterback. The Falcons are passing on like their future franchise quarterback, their future franchise tackle, their future franchise wide receiver, their future franchise cornerback. Whatever they want to do, the best player at a valuable position, is going to be gone by the time they get to 15. So you're going to need to overpay to do this.
Atlanta knows what you're doing.
Right. Balancing out the value perfectly is not something that's going to work out here. You need to overpay a little bit to get your quarterback of the future. So as the Falcons, I'm accepting this. If they offer that much, they might as well go all in for Watson. That's I'm gonna tell you right now, but that's like half of what you're gonna need to give up for Watson. You're giving that up and Stephon Gilmore and probably another first.
Because Miami gets to give up two first rounders this year, a first rounder next year, probably 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And throw in whatever the hell they want.
Yeah,
they want to throw.
Throw in whatever young defensive player the Texans like. That's what Miami would be giving up. If you're going that far for Watson, this I don't think they're really comparable, because this is an aggressive trade for a young quarterback, but this is something in the realm. This is less than the realm of what we've seen for these deals in the past. You look at like the Robert Griffin deal, for example. This isn't even in the realm of what gets you Deshaun Watson. So you're talking about like your team needs to be set if you're going to be a Super Bowl contender with Deshaun Watson, and which they're close. If Deshaun Watson's the quarterback here, I think they're close, especially with the money that they're going to have the next couple of years to play in free agency. And this is Ryan Jesse. The Falcons have like 42 players rostered. They'll take as many 21 picks as they can get. Completely agree. So this is my offer. Are you moving up for the Patriots if this is the deal?
I'm reluctant. I had something else in mind. So I think we're kind of split here in the chat. Maybe a little bit leaning towards that's too much. The chat doesn't want to give it up. So why don't we let it play out? Okay. And scrap the trade and see what happens from there.
All right. So we're not going to do this. Most of it, I think the majority of the chat's happy here. Has a deal like this ever been made before with draft shop? No, this would be like a draft day deal. Stoco. Let me pull that up. I keep forgetting that we can pull them up here. Shout out StreamYard. But yeah, this is a deal that wouldn't happen right now. This is a deal that would happen on draft day, because you need to make sure that your guy's there. I don't think they'd be coming up for just a quarterback. This is a strong class, so maybe there's 2 that they like. But you need to make sure that your guy is there. You're not just coming up to 4 so that you can get Justin Fields and then watching the Jets take him at 2, and then you're stuck there for sure. But so I while we're at 4, because this is such a popular trade back spot, I'm going to make the pick so that we can have fun with it. But I just want to explore some other ideas of what could burn them if they choose not to make this pick. You look at like a San Francisco. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. I don't know how to. There we go. You look at like a San Francisco. They got plenty of picks coming up in the next few years. They got a bunch of comp picks coming in for losing their head coach and GM. So you look at like a 1, a 2, a 1 next year. They're 3 picks higher than you. So both of these are already more appealing. And then you look at, a 2 next year, and then maybe they get away with like a round 3, or they get away with nothing because they're a couple picks higher and the Falcons fall in love with Micah Parsons and he's more realistic to be there at 12, something like that. 12 is still kind of the range where you can see a top tier talent get to. 15, not so much, even though it's only a couple picks difference. That's like key range where if a guy is surprisingly falling, you're going to see a trade up most likely. So this is the type of deal that could burn you. This is just one example of it. I won't make it for now, but just keep that in mind as we go. For now, I'll take. I was really expecting to make this trade, so I'm not even on board here. I'll just take
Sorry,
Penny Sewell. No, he's the best player available. This absolutely screws the Bengals here because I think he pretty much needs to be the Bengals pick. But I don't think that the Falcons have so many needs they don't really have a need here, so they just take the best player here, which is Penny Sewell. The Broncos, Brad Taylor's through on. The Broncos are another wild card where they could absolutely get up, and again, they're picking 6 spots higher than you, so it's a lot easier.
Yeah, so we're moving on to number 5. The Bengals, like you said, get screwed. And as much as I would say, give Joe Burrow somebody to throw the ball to, he's not going to throw the ball to anybody if he's getting buried every play. So you got to go offensive line again here, and I think Rashawn Slater is the number 2 guy in the draft. So it's going to be Rashawn Slater.
All right. Yeah, I think that's an unfortunate pick for them because it's probably a tiny bit high for Slater in my opinion. But they aren't in a position where they can trade back and hope one falls and then end up with one of the second, third tier tackles. They really need Sewell, but Slater's like the only really acceptable plan B at this spot. And I don't think the Bengals. I'm trying to pull this just from what I've seen from the Bengals Twitter people, but I don't think the Bengals are a big trade back team. I think they historically pretty much just pick where they are. I could be completely wrong on that, but that's my memory of it. But that takes us to 6, and the Eagles making this pick here, and it's going to be this one's going to be there a lot. If Jamar Chase falls to 6, it's just a no-brainer for the Eagles, and we'll keep it moving because we've made this pick like 3 out of 4 weeks, I think.
Yeah, I've got a run here 7 and 9, so I'm just going to fire through them. 7 Detroit, it's going to be Jalen Waddle.
Okay, real quick though, I don't control the Patriots, so it's not up to me. Right. I do think this is like the floor of where you can get to. I think if one of these guys falls to the Broncos, they're either taking him if he's their guy, and if he's not, I think the trade out's going to happen. So this is your stance. I just wanted to get that in real quick. But 7 Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, they need weapons. They've got no one for a quarterback to throw the ball to. I don't think you draft a quarterback and then have nobody for him to throw to. I think that would be awful. So even though I don't think Jared Goff is a good quarterback, that's just the situation that they're in. Mm-hmm. Miami, they can go receiver or tight end here. I think, kind of weapons is what they're looking for. But Devontae Smith has been the pick a few times just because the familiarity with him and Tagovailoa and just kind of it feels like the pick. So Miami's going to go with Devontae Smith. And number 9, Denver, I think they trade back with the Patriots.
All right, let's do it. And the devil's advocate to everything that I've been saying, where you need to get up to 4 or you need to get up to 7, only 1 time or 2 times ever have 3 quarterbacks gone with the first 3 picks. It's never happened in the first 4 picks. And only a couple times has it happened in the top 10 where 4 quarterbacks even go. So it's entirely possible that one of these quarterbacks just isn't as high for the league as they are for fans, and they fall here. So this isn't like a completely unrealistic scenario.
And the way I view – sorry.
No, go ahead.
The way I view it is for the quarterback who's there now, Trey Lance, you need to have somebody in place for him to learn behind. He's not going to start year 1. Do you want Trey Lance to learn behind Jared Goff? Hell no. In my eyes. That's a waste of a pick because he needs seasoning. He needs somebody who plays his game to learn behind it. You don't have that. Do you want him, say, Philadelphia, learning behind a guy who's in year 2, who's probably should be learning behind somebody else? No. Miami, same situation, year 2 guy, not going to happen. So I just think none of those teams are in a good situation to draft Trey Lance. So I don't think that they would. And the same thing goes for the Broncos. Even though they need a quarterback, Drew Lock's not the guy. Drew Lock's not teaching anybody how to play quarterback and how to run an NFL offense. So they trade back, try to recoup some value, and give themselves something to build up the roster around Lock.
All right, so what are we thinking here?
So Denver's at 9, New England's at 15, so you're obviously swapping those. I don't think it takes all that much for New England unless they get into a bidding war with San Francisco. But I don't think San Francisco is really looking at Lance as their guy. I think if they're trading up for anybody, it's Zach Wilson.
Yep. I think that's reasonable. That we talked about that last week. Zach Wilson is like the Shanahan type quarterback. He's like perfect. The final boss of Shanahan quarterbacks.
Exactly. So young Jeezy fan Drew Lock. So I don't think you need to give up much really in this situation. Probably a 2 this year, 46, which sucks because then you're waiting until 96 to pick next. But that's a situation, and maybe a late round pick, maybe like a fourth or a fifth.
All right, let's
probably say fifth.
I'll even negotiate you down a little bit. I think you get away with like a pick swap here. You go like a fifth and you get a sixth back type deal.
There you go.
Let's look at that. Let's send it through. This is the deal. So it's going to be 15, 46, 147 for 9 and 190. And let's look at what that's doing. They've accepted.
So Trey Lance, baby. Lock it in.
Trey Lance is going to be the Patriots quarterback of the future after Cam Newton leads them to playoffs for 1 year, recoups his value, and then goes to Chicago and has the rest of his Hall of Fame career. So Trey Lance, all right, let's talk about it for a minute. Trey Lance, I think that of the options, I think we're both on board that Justin Fields is a better prospect. I don't think either of us fully believe that he's going to fall to a point where the Patriots can get him. I think that that's kind of just draft cycle stuff right now. And by the time we actually get there, he's going to be back into QB2 territory. But Trey Lance is my second favorite option for them. I like him for the Patriots a lot better than Zach Wilson. I kind of like him better than Zach Wilson in general. But especially behind Cam. I mean, this is faster Cam. Like he's just about as big as Cam and almost as fast as Lamar Jackson. He has a cannon, 1 year of college experience, but he did that at 19. He's still only, I think he plays this year at 20, 21. He's one of the youngest players in the
21.
draft. 21. One of the younger players in the draft. And you have Cam for a year who is, has already shown to be a good mentor. Players love him. He loves working with younger guys. I think this is like a dream fit. The Justin Fields is like a fever dream fit, but Trey Lance is like the dream fit, right?
Yeah, and as we talk about quarterbacks, I feel like the number one thing that needs to be mentioned is the situation that they're being put in. Who are they working with on a daily basis? Even with a quarterback who's starting right away, you oftentimes see teams sign like a veteran backup to kind of let them work with them every day, kind of learn the league, all that stuff. I think situation is the number one thing, and there's no better situation for any quarterback in this draft than Fields to go learn behind Cam Newton because that's who he is as a player. And like best case scenario, that's who he is as a person and as a leader. Like if you can only imagine that, kind of you're taking Trey Lance, who is early years Cam Newton, and then letting him learn from seasoned veteran Newton who's seen everything. That's the perfect situation. I think it's perfect for the Patriots, and I think that's what they have in mind right now. So,
and this is the first time that we've made a trade up period for the Patriots. This is the first time we've gone quarterback for the Patriots, and I think this is by far the most exciting outcome. At the beginning of tonight, when we were talking about the free agency ramifications, we were talking about how this sets them up for a trade up. I don't think it necessarily indicates. I was saving this for when we did it because I had a feeling this is how we were going to go tonight. I don't necessarily think that this means the move that they made means that they are going in for a trade up. I think that what they're just doing is just laying the groundwork for their next competitive team, which is probably a year or two away from now. I think that we talked about it Monday night. They're a borderline playoff team right now. They should be a playoff team right now if Cam Newton is what I think Cam Newton is. If Cam Newton's who the critics think Cam Newton is, then they're probably more of a borderline playoff team, similar, not 9 and 8 because it's probably gonna be a 17 game season, borderline 7 seed. I think that they're just making good acquisitions of players that they think fit their scheme. They're probably transitioning to a 3-down lineman set based on who they're going for. I think they're just doing a little bit of a makeover with young players who can lay the groundwork for their next Super Bowl contending team, which is probably 2 to 3 years away. That being said, the piece that's missing from a 2 to 3 years away team, unless Cam finds a new life in terms of longevity, because even if you're a big fan of him, he looks like someone who maybe has like 2 to 3 years left, is that quarterback. So they're putting themselves in position where they can more comfortably go up and get this quarterback if they want it, which is why I think all this buzz has started since free agency. So I don't think we can pencil in the Patriots to be that aggressive trade up, but this is absolutely a more realistic scenario than it was 3 days ago.
Yeah, I think it's a very realistic scenario. And let's not forget they won 7 games last year in New England. That's like a crime, but That's a great year in Dallas. So
this roster was I won't get on my Cam Newton tangent. I know most of you don't want to hear it, even if you support Cam Newton. But that roster last year was terrible. With all the opt-outs, with the lack of cap, they should have been picking like top 5 to 7 range. And they won seven games, and they had terrible one-score game luck, which typically evens out. They were like 4 plays away from being a playoff team. It's just
we're not going to get into all the factors because we're both on the same train here.
but this is a team that's ready to make a playoff bounce back quickly. They still had some holes to fill. They filled some of them. The long-term quarterback is what they need to really start setting up a next wave of like consistent contention. But they should be right back there this year.
They're ready to make a move. That's the perfect way to put it, I think.
Yeah. I still think because it's the Patriots and they typically like this is already more splash than we've seen since Moss, Welker, Adelius Thomas in 2007. But like if there's an offseason to make it with these quarterbacks, like this is it. Like this is the perfect storm to do it. But it is still the Patriots. It's still Bill Belichick. So I think a rock solid trade back into a linebacker to fill that gap between second and third pick still makes sense.
Kellen Mond in round 6, I agree.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, you take Kellen Mond or Jamie Newman or something as your developmental guy. Completely agree there. All right, so let's keep it moving. We're definitely going to run overtime tonight, but that's all right. There's a lot to talk about. So, Cowboys are on the clock. We've historically just gone cornerback for the Cowboys. I want to switch it up a little bit because every single week so far, we're 4 weeks in. The first 3 weeks, we have said every single time, how does Kyle Pitts fall out of the top 10? He is a top 5 talent in this draft. Why does he fall to the Giants, to the Chargers, to the Vikings, wherever we had him go the past 3 weeks? I'm not going to let that happen this time. He's going to be a top 10 pick. The Cowboys have a couple solid young tight ends in Dalton Schultz and Blake Jarwin, but it's Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones loves that, flashy top, prospect at the position, can make him face the franchise. They just locked in Dak. They've got 3 good wide receivers that they've got, highly paid Zeke and the better running back in Tony Pollard. They've got an aging but still good offensive line. I could see Kyle Pitts being like their, just the crown on top here. Jerry falling in love with him and then making the splash. So let's go with Kyle Pitts at 10.
Yeah, and so we're moving on to 11. The Giants get screwed. We've had a couple teams get screwed over in this draft, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. It wouldn't be an NFL draft if that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So the Giants kind of they have to go edge here just because Pitts is the number 1 option. Receivers are the 2 option, and no one's drafting Rashad Bateman at 11 as much as Ryan loves him.
Also, it's just worth noting real quick that the Giants, this came out since we've started. The Giants are in talks for Kenny Golladay. They're going to have him in for a visit. They seem to be the leader in the clubhouse for him right now. So that might curtail the wide receiver need a little bit.
Right. So they go edge here. I think it's Gregory Rousseau. I think he's more of a fit for New York. I agree. That's how I feel about it. But This isn't what we would do. It's what we think the teams are going to do, or what we believe they could do. So Gregory Rousseau here. Quiddy Pay's a better player. Gregory Rousseau is probably going to get more sacks in year 1, so everybody's going to act like it's a great pick, but it's Rousseau.
All right, so this is our first highlight player of the night. It's Gregory Rousseau. I'm gonna start this off right now. You're gonna hear a lot of parroting from me as we make each of these picks because I don't really like this edge class a lot, especially not round 1. I think there's some value to be had day 2, the second and third rounds. But a lot of these guys, I don't know how many are going to go round 1. I think the league agrees that it's not a great draft. Just how we've seen the edge players getting paid, where positions that are deeper in the draft, like wide receiver, have kind of been a slower market. But Gregory Rousseau especially is one who does not do it for me. I think that there's a lot of value to be had day 2, day 3. I think if he was a day 2 pick, he's still like the most likely day 2 edge to not hit that value. He's really raw, and typically the selling point for raw edge players is that they have peak athleticism, but he doesn't have that either. He has good athleticism. He doesn't have that crazy athleticism that's going to sell you into like just molding a ball of clay here. So I agree with you where we could see him go earlier than he should. I don't think this is the most unrealistic scenario, but man, this would probably be in the running for worst pick of the night if this were to happen in real life for me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Gregory Rousseau. For our spreadsheet that me and Spags did, I did most of the edge guys. We split it up, but I did most of the edge guys, and I did kind of the top half. And Rousseau's just not. He's not a first round edge guy in my eyes. But what he showed in his time at Miami is that he can get after the quarterback and he can disrupt things. And I think teams kind of fall in love with that. Pull it up for the people.
Yeah, so this is, if you guys, will plug it every single week. If you guys haven't seen it yet, Keegan and Spags have combined to work on this spreadsheet. You can see at the bottom we have quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight end. They got every position handled here. They're gonna, as they watch guys, they're gonna add their pros, their cons, the information here. They're gonna give their grades. As they write articles, they're gonna link the articles in here. When they visit with the Patriots, they're gonna get added to this column. So if you're looking for like a quick hitter on draft guys, this is it. And then if you're looking for more of a deep dive on guys that interest you from this list, the articles are going to be coming up all off season, and they'll get linked in here as they do so. You can find this pinned to both Spags and Keegan's Twitter accounts, which you can go follow. If you aren't already following, follow them at the bottom there. And so when Keegan says the spreadsheet, or I reference the spreadsheet, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah. So just back on Rousseau, he can get after the quarterback and he's disruptive and he does all of those kind of like buzzword things, the buzzwords that you'll find. He's disruptive, athletic, he's bendy, he's all of those things, but he's super raw, like you said, and he's not an every down player. But when you have a defensive line like the Giants have, where they've got a really good guy in the middle and kind of no one else to go get the quarterback, this is the pick that you're forced into making. Kwity Paye is not a great pass rusher, and he's not what they need right now. So if they're going to make that pick, I think it's Rousseau.
Okay. Stephen G. White, what's up? We're chilling, bud. We're having a great time. Patriots are doing things that we can talk about in the first week of free agency. That never happens. So we're living the dream here. How you doing tonight? Studio Jim, we're probably going to get to defensive tackles in the next, in the coming weeks as we highlight them. So we won't talk too much about them tonight. And I specifically won't talk about them because I'm typically playing catch up at this point where I'm hitting the position groups the week that we do them, but we'll definitely talk about them in a few weeks when we get to interior defensive linemen. I think it sounds like we're on a similar page for Rousseau. He is a guy that I would hope to see like go late round 2, early round 3. But if he's the type of guy, especially with where he was valued before this season and then he didn't play this season, he's definitely the type of guy that we could see some team fall in love with.
He could have been a top 10 pick last year,
right,
to be honest with you.
He's a redshirt sophomore, right? So he couldn't have come out last year.
He couldn't come out. Yeah,
right. So if he could have come out last year, he might have been a top 10 pick at that with the hype that he was giving.
I could talk about it all day, but we'll keep going.
We'll move on here. We'll go to the 49ers. They're kind of an interesting spot here because a lot of what you would think they might do has gone away, but the top 2 cornerbacks are still on the board, and I don't think the top cornerback has made it to them a single time yet that we've been doing this. I honestly, again, as I mentioned, especially on the defensive side, I was hitting a lot of the offensive side because that's where I want the Patriots to focus this year. So as we do defensive positions, I'm going to be playing catch up the week that we're doing them. So I don't have a personal opinions, or I don't know how these might fit in 49er in San Francisco specifically, but I'm going to go with Patrick Surtain here. It's becoming more money, but he's been the consensus cornerback 1 for most of the season. And they're losing Richard Sherman. They lost to Kello Witherspoon. They could use some retooling at the position. So I think it makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah, I think that's their number one.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think that's their number one need, like at this point, in terms of everything that's happened throughout the offseason. Yeah. They signed a couple offensive guys. But that moves on to 13 in the Chargers. Mm-hmm. The Chargers haven't had a corner fall to them, or one of the top 2 corners. And I think that's kind of the perfect place for them to go.
You think so?
Did they sign one? Am I?
No, but they still have Casey Hayward. They still have Chris Harris.
I thought they released Casey Hayward.
If they did, I missed it.
All right, we're doing some research real quick.
All right, chat. Did they release Casey Hayward? We'll do the Googles. Hayward got cut.
He's a free agent.
All right. Fair enough.
Free agent. They haven't re-signed him, so they did.
I rescind everything.
All
Go
right.
for it.
See, I know what I'm talking about. All right. I think they go the number 2 corner. I think Caleb Farley is
Everyone tell Ryan that he's an idiot in chat.
right.
Caleb Farley, go ahead.
I think he's very close to being the number 1 corner. Like it's 1A, 1B for me. Surtain, Farley. Farley's he's really good. He's a little bit smaller, kind of a wiry guy, but that's the pick.
All right. We're on to the Vikings, and I had a really great pick in mind for the Vikings like 2 days ago, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. I think that they're in a position where they can kind of go wherever. They haven't made a big splash at a position of need yet. They signed Dalvin Tomlinson, completely spacing right now. Too much going on. Which was already kind of a position to break. They still have Linval Joseph. It was a bit of an interesting signing there for them, but it doesn't really change their draft philosophy here because they just are that that wasn't a position of need. So I'm gonna look at potentially trading back here. I don't know if there's really a player here that might stand out to anyone to come trade up for, but we have Micah Parsons on the board. We have all the edge guys outside of Greg Russo. We have a couple offensive tackles. We have Mac Jones. I think it's a bit early for Jones, but as I'm looking at the board, I don't know if you had a trade up in mind for any of your teams. I don't really see a need to trade up for any of my teams right now.
I didn't, but I do have a pick in mind for you if you if you want a little bit of
open to suggestions here.
So if I'm not mistaken, they just lost one of their tackles. So they need offensive linemen. And if they didn't lose one of their tackles, they definitely lost a center and a guard through free agency. So their offensive line's a little thin right now, and there's a guy who can play multiple positions that's available.
All right, are you thinking interior guy like Elijah Vera Tucker? Or are we thinking
Elijah Vera Tucker? He can slide outside.
That's where I was kind of trending to here.
Yeah, he's a guard center. He can slide outside if you need. I think he's good. I think he's the number 1 interior guy. So
I agree.
That's a good spot for them.
All right, I like it. Let's go with Elijah Vera Tucker here. And then that takes us on to the Broncos at 15, who traded back with the Patriots as we just did, 20 minutes ago or whatever. It's still your pick, so you're up here. Top cornerbacks off the board.
Dream scenario for Denver.
Let's hear it.
They need a guy on the second level of the defense. It's Micah Parsons. He's a number 1 linebacker. We talked about it last week for you guys. You and Spags, you didn't really have him as number 1, but I think he's number 1 on most teams' boards. Yeah. And Denver needs somebody to kind of help out the second level of the defense. They've got Chubb, and I think Miller's returning, Von Miller. So they've got guys who can disrupt the quarterback, but they've got no one who can stop the run. They were awful last year on defense. So just pick up the best defender available. I think it's Parsons.
Yeah, they got a couple of decent linebackers, but they don't have that guy. Micah Parsons probably is my linebacker 1. I think it's a closer race for that than Micah Parsons' pedigree would indicate. But yeah, I agree. I was wondering if you might go him or with Kwity Paye here, but I like the Parsons pick. And then we got the Cardinals, who have been making a flurry of moves today that I've had, all off the top of my head aren't even really coming to mind. I know they signed AJ Green and they traded for Rodney Hudson. I think there was a couple more that they've made that I'm not remembering right now.
I can pull it up for you real quick.
Right, let's do that real quick while I get a tweet off too.
AJ Green, Kelvin Beachum, Rodney Hudson. They re-signed Marcus Golden. They signed J.J. Watt a few weeks ago. They got their punter back in Andy Lee. That's big news. So they made a couple moves. They shored up the offensive line, which probably would have been a pick that I would have gone for, earlier today. I wouldn't have gone receiver or anything this early for them, but they shored up the offensive line. So
I'm kind of looking at like a they obviously signed J.J. Watt. That is the other big move that just didn't come to mind right away. They signed J.J. Watt, which takes like an edge need off because they have him and Chandler Jones now. Let's just keep it classic. Let's go with J.C. Horn here. They're losing Patrick Peterson. I want to say that they signed a cornerback, and that's why I was hesitating on this pick, but nothing's coming to mind still. So let's go J.C. Horn. They can still use an infusion of youth regardless there. And just continue to shore up that defense. And then you're on the clock with the Raiders at 17.
So we've I've seen it a lot, and we had it last week where the Raiders were kind of forced into taking the second linebacker available. But now the top edge guy is still on the board, and they whiffed on it a few years ago with Cleveland Farrell, and they haven't really. They found Max Crosby, but he's kind of a one-dimensional player. So
and then they
give
signed
him Kwity Paye.
they signed Yannick Ngakwe.
They did,
on
yeah.
day one, just to
another
everyone,
pass rusher type.
Yep.
You know, and in my eyes, he rushes the passer and he can make a splash every once in a while against the run. Kwity Paye is the best run defender in the draft on the edge. There are obviously interior guys that are better, but he is an unbelievable run defender. That's what they kind of need on the outsides. Somebody who can play all three downs, and they're getting the number one guy at 17, which I think is great for them. So Kwity Paye.
All right, and this is the one. I said I was going to sound like a broken record for a lot of the night. This is the one exception. Kwity Paye is my only clear first round edge guy. You said it earlier. He's not the best pure pass rusher among the edge group, but I think he's the most well balanced player. I think he's a plus athletically. He's pretty refined as far as edge guys go in this class specifically. I think he's like a lock. I think he's like a top 20 guy in most classes, where I think that a lot of the other edge players in this class are going to go a little bit higher because of the position than they should because the group is weaker overall. He's gonna provide you ability against the run. He's going to be able to get after the passer. He might never be like the competing for the sack, the sack leader in any given year. You're not going to necessarily see him up at 17, 18, 19 sacks. But I think he can be a consistent double-digit guy in his peak. And he's strong against the run. An important thing that I think needs to be focused on now, and Justice Muscat has been talking about this on Twitter recently, who, in my opinion, is the edge rusher Bible on Twitter. With how the passing game has evolved and how quick the game's getting out, the ball's getting out, excuse me. Now, those speed rushers that were so popular the past 10 years or so aren't really that sexy anymore, because by the time you bend around to tackle any relatively NFL caliber tackle, they're going to slow you down for at least a half a second getting around that edge. And that's enough at this point to get a pass off. So you need someone who's able to blow up. You still need the speed element to keep tackles honest, but you need someone who's also able to blow up a tackle. You need someone who's able to beat them inside. And I think Kwity Paye is the most refined pass rusher from that standpoint. I think he's able to win outside, but he's also willing to go into a tackle's body and blow him up. And he also has a set of moves that allow him to win inside as well. I think that's what sets him apart from the rest of this edge class.
He's still new at the position too. He played running back in high school. This guy's got 3 years of experience on the defensive line, still learning a little bit. Like you said, he's refined and he can do a good amount of stuff, but he's got a long way to go to tapping into all of his potential. I would say, and on your point of the speed rusher and stuff, the speed rushers and defensive linemen aren't just changing, tackles are changing. These guys aren't just the fat guys who couldn't play defensive line, so they had to switch over to the other side of the ball. These guys are athletic. Taylor Lewan probably is one of the best athletes on the Titans right now, and he's their left tackle, and he's there are great athletes at left tackle. You're not just going to run around guys anymore like you could 5-6 years ago. So, like you said, you need a guy who can kind of switch up, have a variety of moves, can beat you in multiple ways, and Paye is that guy. He's the guy who can do that in this draft.
All right, and now we're going to go on to the Dolphins here, and I'm going to keep the edge train rolling. I'm going to go with Azeez Ojulari, and this is where it kind of falls back. Again, I think that Kwity Paye is the only clear-cut first-round caliber guy. I think he's a top 20 pick. If he ends up going top 10, I think that's a bit rich, but I think anywhere in that 11 to 20 range makes plenty of sense for Paye. Azeez is a guy that ideally you take on day 2 and you tap into his upside and you have a home run. But just given the athletic profile that he has, this is typically the type of player who ends up going somewhere in the first round. I didn't love him as much as I expected to watching him, but he is an athletic freak. And to me, if you're going to be a first-round edge, you either need to be a refined pass rusher or a refined overall player like Kwity Paye. You need to be an athletic freak like Azeez Ojulari. You need to be not terrible in the other of those two categories in order to be a first-round pick. If you're going to when you combine both of those, that's where you start talking about top 10 type guys, Chase Young type guys, if they're very good in both areas. But I think Aziz has the athleticism. I don't think he's that refined as a pass rusher yet. So you're banking on molding the ball of clay here. So he is someone that, if this is the pick, it's almost like a incomplete if you're going to grade it, because you are just betting on the upside here. You're betting on the athleticism, which at the edge position is a fine bet to make to me. So I wouldn't railroad it, but I'm also not giving this like an A+ type pick. I think that if he falls to round 2 and someone takes it, that's where you're like, I love the upside there. Round 1, where he's kind of your cornerstone, is where it gets a little dicey. But the Dolphins are in a position where this is their second pick. So this is someone that it makes a little bit more sense to bet on that upside, because you already have another first-round pick coming in with that ideal infusion of talent. So where do you stand?
Yeah, I wish Spags was here. I wish Spags was here because he loves Ojulari, and I don't want to like trash all over the pick.
Yeah, I'm bumping this week because he has a lot of edge crushes in this draft. It would have been fun to have.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of Ojulari just because like what you see isn't all that great, and it's a lot of like potential, like you were saying. I don't want to parrot what you were saying, but I'm not a huge fan of him as a player right now. But as Spags would mention, a million times, the kid's 19 right now. Like, I don't even think he's 20. Mm-hmm. Super young, untapped potential. He's got a ton of stuff to work with. If he can get better, and if he can get just good enough at some spots, because some spots he's horrible, but if he can just kind of move up to solid at a couple spots and really take off as an edge rusher and get to the quarterback, it can be a great pick, like you said. But this is a perfect spot for him because Miami is, it's their second pick, and they already got their guy on offense, so take a shot on the defense. But not the biggest fan of Ojulari, but he's got some potential.
All right, and that takes us to 19. And 4 days ago, this is like a dream scenario for them with Mac Jones falling. They signed Ryan Fitzpatrick, and it's looking like they're just going to have a veteran QB competition. But maybe you still see them going quarterback here. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I think it's such a great scenario for them because now they get to make the decision. They don't have to have somebody else make the decision for them. Like, he's available if they want him. And I think I am going to go Mac Jones just because I'm thinking about who's available. Like, Darisaw as an offensive lineman, as a tackle, is available. And I think that could be a good pick, but I still think that's a little too rich for Darisaw and kind of the situation that they're in. Mm-hmm. Kadarius Toney here is a reach. Rashad Bateman's not quite a reach, but I just don't know about receiver. So I think they go Mac Jones.
With them whiffing to this, no, sorry. With them whiffing on this point to wide receiver, that's probably where I would have gone. But we all know that Bateman's like my number one dude in this class. So I think it's completely fair to go Mike Jones. And the Bears get cucked here. I really should have kind of pushed for a trade up for the Bears here, because I think Mac Jones, like, they pretty much they're kind of backing themselves into a Mac Jones corner here. But
the red rifle, baby.
He ends up going to Washington. So the Bears are going to have to live with Andy Dalton for a year. Yes, sir, Studio Jim. But the Bears seemingly backed themselves into the corner. It's not going to work out that way. Do I just YOLO give them Bateman? Do I fill the offensive tackle there? That's boring. We're going to go Rashad Bateman because I want to talk about Rashad Bateman some more. Their reports are they're looking to trade Anthony Miller. He's flashed a couple times, but he hasn't really super worked out at the NFL level. So he's had a couple big games, but overall hasn't. If you're going to go Andy Dalton, or if Andy Dalton isn't good enough to beat out Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky, if they're still on the roster come next season, then you need all the wide receiver talent you can get. They had Darnell Mooney, who flashed as a late-round rookie last year, but Rashad Bateman's like the future replacement for Allen Robinson, who they had to franchise this year. Was that a second consecutive franchise? I don't think so. I think this was the first. But typically when you're franchising guys and not working out long-term deals, that's like a year away from losing that player. Allen Robinson completely sounds fed up with being with trash quarterbacks. So as soon as he's allowed to hit the open market, unless the Bears get their quarterback situation figured out by then, I think he's gone. So Rashad Bateman's your future wide receiver one. He's a very good wide receiver too this year. I think he's refined enough that you can see again, I've said this before. I don't want to compare Justin Jefferson because what we just saw from Justin Jefferson was special as a rookie. But he's the type of guy who's refined enough that he can come in and make that a similar, if not quite to that level, type of impact year one. So, just give Andy Dalton's a capable bad quarterback, right? He's a capable average to bad quarterback where you get weapons around him and your team can surprise a little bit. We saw it for years with the Bengals. So just get the weapons around him. Hope the defense has some positive regression. Figure out offensive line in either free agency coming up or the rest of this draft, and just pray, I guess, is where the thought process comes in here.
I feel horrible for Bears fans.
Yeah, I mean, Rashad Bateman's exciting. At least you're never going to have a quarterback, but we still have.
But then you realize you're like, yeah, Rashad Bateman, but Allen Robinson's going to leave in a year, and we don't have a quarterback, and our defense isn't really all that great, and we're going to have to trade all our good defenders. Like, oh, what a horrible situation. Anyways, 21 Colts. I think if they go anywhere other than tackle here, it's a dumb decision. They just lost their franchise left tackle. Christian Darrisaw's the pick.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is a dream scenario for them because that the top two guys aren't falling, but typically we don't see the third offensive tackle fall to them. So this is like a perfect
The
scenario.
Eagles just released old man Alshon Jeffrey, by the way.
He's probably dead. He's probably dead, but like if they're going to trade N'Keal Harry, Alshon Jeffrey they don't have size at wide receiver still.
Yeah.
So Alshon Jeffrey.
Old man N'Keal Harry.
Yeah. Anyway, we're on to 22 with the Titans. They're in an interesting spot because they kind of just had to cut everyone, huh? They by the time we streamed last week, they had already cut Kenny Vaccaro and Malcolm Butler. Since then, they've let go of their offensive tackle, their right tackle, Dennis Kelly. They've let go of Adoree Jackson. They've added Bud Dupree, so that kind of removes the edge need that we had pegged them in a couple times already. But they're kind of in a position where they just need to start regrouping. So I'm going to go with a player that haven't done a deep dive on myself, but I've seen plenty of on Twitter, and I've been a fan of what I've seen, and that's Greg Newsome. I think that he is from what I've seen, and again, I haven't done the deep dive, so it's a big grain of salt because it's just Twitter, which tends to skew positively for players. He should be pushing into like the JC Horn conversation as like the tier 1A below Surtain and Bateman, or not Bateman, excuse me, Farley. Bateman on the brain. They just had to cut both their starting corners to save money, and I mean it feels like a natural position to regroup here. So I think Newsome's one of the better players left on the board that I'm familiar with. So just peg it in here, and that takes us to the Jets for you.
Yeah, perfect year and spot for Newsome too and the Titans. That's a great spot for them. The Jets went out and signed Corey Davis, which kind of like ruined this for me. Like what the hell do they do with their second first round pick? I think they just go best player available. And if we go look at edges, I'm gonna go see what they've got. A guy who's like snuck into the first round on a couple of the draft nicks, like Daniel Jeremiah.
I'm gonna stop you here because I just had something pop up in my head. How, if you're not totally sure what to do here, are you open to a small trade back?
Of course.
All right. I picked for the Browns at 26. We've seen 3 edge rushers go off the board. I think it's their top remaining need. I think that there's one more guy that I would argue as a first rounder, and the rest of them I think should be hard day 2 picks. And with them already filling their safety need, which was their 2 biggest needs, I'm willing to trade up a couple spots here, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the Browns
I completely forgot that we could trade back, so that's good that you remembered.
The Browns pick at 26. So it's going to be 26 and 23. There's not a big gap there. I would say maybe like they have 2 third-round picks, so maybe the earlier of those thirds doesn't look like that would get it done. And then maybe we say a third, and then I don't know, a next year third as well. They don't like that, huh?
It's first round pick. It makes.
Let me try to flip this around. Sometimes you have to get creative with their trade machine. Let's try this. Let's make the Browns the proposal. We'll go 23 for 26, throw into third. Yeah, see, now it's very likely to be accepted. You got to play with the AI a little bit. So let's go with 26 and a third round pick. Maybe that's even a little bit too much. Maybe that's why they weren't likely to accept it. Yeah, it looks like they could get away with a little bit less. But I think that third round pick's fair. Maybe we grab a fifth round pick back. What do you think?
Yep, sounds good.
I have an extra pick assigned here. But so we got 26. The Jets pick up 91, and then the Browns get 146 back with it. So they drop 2 rounds here, and they use their extra first round pick to go secure an edge rusher here.
Sounds good.
That? You on board with that? All right.
Yep.
I would imagine the Jets would accept this. Yep. So now they're on the board, and there is one edge rusher that I think is worth a first round flyer where I'd be like, I get the appeal. The rest of these guys that we may or may not talk about in the mock draft, we'll certainly talk about them after if they don't get picked. I think are like guys where if I see upside, I see it on day 2. But right now the guy is Jalen Phillips. He's not even my edge 4, to be honest. Studio Jim's a big fan of him here. We see Phillips top 10 talent. But the injuries are a bit scary, but the injuries also leave the intrigue of the upside, right? Because he was a 5-star guy, athletic freak. He's, and that shows up on tape. He's one of the guys where the athleticism does pop, but the injuries really ruined his UCLA career, and he kind of had to stand out. He transferred to Miami and had to kind of rebuild his stock a little bit, and he's done so. From what I've seen, I still don't super love him. Who's the third Miami guy this year? I'm spacing on his Quincy Roche. There it is. Yep. Quincy Roche. You watch Miami this year, and Quincy Roche looked like relatively close to as productive and talented as Jalen Phillips, and he's like a late day 2, day 3 type of guy. So that doesn't really scream positive for me about Phillips, and then comparing last year to Russo. But I get the appeal here with the size, the athleticism, the pedigree, the perceived upside of just the lack of experience he got to carry out in college. So if someone were to fall in love with him on day 1, I get it more than there's another guy that I would argue potentially above him a little bit, or at least in the range of him that we'll talk about later. But this is one again where I would grade it incomplete because I get it, but you're banking on you're doing a lot of projecting here. How do you feel about Phillips?
Yeah, I'm not as high on Phillips as like Spags is, but I think he's right here in this area, like late first round, early second round pick. But it all depends on who's valuing what he brings to the table and what they need. The Browns, they need front 7 defenders, and he's the best option right now. So I think that's a good trade and a good spot for him. Whether or not it works out for him, like I have no idea. Phillips I don't know.
The injury stuff's scary. Again, concussions are scary. He's had more than just concussions. He had some lower body injuries, I believe. I forget exactly what, so I won't guess at it. But I know he's had more than just concussion issues. So he's definitely a boom or bust type pick. The Browns are a team on the upswing, and those types of teams, especially teams that don't have a history of success like the Browns, you often see them taking those home run swings, trying to just go all in. Playing across from Myles Garrett, of course, helps too. Looking at year 1 production and just that production down the line. So this is a spot that I think would make a lot of sense for him if they're going to go there. And go ahead.
Sorry, just to address this real quick. He left the UCLA program before he entered the transfer portal. Like he was, I assume, weighing all of his options, like whether or not he wanted to continue playing football.
Right.
So that's
it wasn't he transferred from UCLA. It was he was done playing football for UCLA and then decided to transfer.
Exactly, and he never played a full season.
Right, which could have easily gone the way of just hanging up football, the way we saw with that Oklahoma tight end that ended up coming back for a smaller school. I forget where he's at now, but Grant Calcaterra. UCLA forced him to retire is what Steve. Yep, good. Same time on that. Yep. Forced him to retire. But that takes us on to 24. We got the Steelers on the clock. I'm almost tempted to make another trade back here. The team that I would want to target, I don't own them, first of all, and it's interdivision. I'd kind of see the Ravens coming up here. So I'll make this. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't own them, so I couldn't see a division rival trade there anyway, even if I did own the Ravens. So I guess I'll make the pick here. they're kind of, again, they're in an interesting spot. I want to go back and jump on a question that we saw earlier, if I can find it real quick. And if that, hopefully it's still in the chat hanging out. I didn't ignore him, but I didn't, wasn't the right time to bring it up. I can't find it. We had a question coming earlier that asked if we saw a running back, any of these running backs being first round worthy. I typically don't lean towards taking running backs round 1 unless it's like this type of range where you're late. You're set on most other needs. It's a luxury pick, and you're just trying to get that 5th-year option out of the rookie, pay scale. We're in the range where I'd be on board with it. I think Najee Harris and Travis Etienne are talented enough to go round 1 if you ignore positional value. I don't think that the Steelers need a running back. I think that they have a collection of average ones. I don't think they have a good one. But their offensive line is also so bad, and they need an infusion of youth on defense. They need a younger quarterback of the future. They basically need everything other than wide receiver and tight end for the short-term tight end. And then, a couple other spots. But I don't think that you can justify taking a running back when you have that many other holes. So I'm going to go with Tevin Jenkins here. They had arguably the worst offensive line in football last year after, that's a Steelers staple is having a strong offensive line. So they need to start building that back up. I don't know much about any of these offensive tackles yet outside of Sewell and Slater. So I'm just going top 1 on the Draft Network's board, and that's Jenkins.
Yeah, I've got 3 straight picks here, so I'm going to kind of just like fly through them so we can kind of catch up on things.
Mm-hmm.
Jags went buck wild in free agency. They signed like 11 guys.
Yeah, a lot of depth guys, only one kind of big name signing in Shaquille Griffin.
Right, so like
them too, but
4 DBs, 5 defensive linemen, 2 offensive linemen, 3 wide receivers, a running back. So I think the best spot for them right now is kind of pick the best player available on the back 7 because they're struggling there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's Trevon Moehrig. They need a safety. They haven't had good safety play in like 6 or 7 years. Right. So they go safety, just best player available for like what they can get.
I think that's fair. You got they signed their top corner, so they could still go second corner because they're kind of pretty bare at that position. If Greg Newsome gone, I don't think the value is there for another corner. Exactly. They signed Rayshon Jenkins. I don't remember the exact deal he got. I think it was decently sizable, but not massive. And I'm spacing on who their other safety would be next to him right now. So regardless, that's an infusion of youth that can happen there. I'm completely on board with that.
Yeah, I think Jets, they go front 7 defense. It's either between Christian Barmore or Young Jock. They just took an Alabama defensive tackle a couple of years ago. Like good player. He's going to take up time in the middle. I don't think it's worth a defensive tackle right now. So I think they go Young Jock for the Jets. That's our boy. We're putting it on a T-shirt.
Young Jock, elite aesthetic, elite nickname. Yeah. He's got the intangibles handled.
And then the Ravens, I think this might be a bit of a reach. But
sorry, just to jump back on that because it really didn't hit me right away. This is a potential like Jamal Adams replacement. Jamal Adams, as we all know, is truly a linebacker and not a safety. He just gets toasted in coverage even by old man Gronk. But Jamal Adams is a very good pass rusher, like an elite pass rusher for his size. Great against the run, solid against less athletic-ish in the pass game. The pass now have tight ends to cover. That's absolutely true. And Robert Saleh, their new head coach, is a defensive mind, so I could see him having a lot of fun with Young Jock.
Yeah, fun fact, Jamal Adams' girlfriend at the time yelled at me on Twitter because I said he was a bottom 5 safety in the league. It was a fun day. And then the Ravens, I think it's a reach, but I don't think there's any clear pick for them here. Like they could go edge, safety, receiver, like they could do a ton of different stuff. I think they take the best player available, and on my board, it's Pat Freiermuth.
Ooh, with Mark Andrews?
Yeah, so Mark Andrews is coming up on the contract. I believe it's next season. He'll be a free agent. He's probably going to get paid because, as we know, tight end play in the NFL stinks right now. Like there aren't good tight ends. I think somebody's going to throw a bag at Mark Andrews. Pat Freiermuth is really good. And he kind of – I think Pat Fryermuth allows them to do what the Patriots are kind of trying to do because they're in a similar situation, right. Not with quarterback at all, but with their weapons and what they'll be looking to do. They've got the running backs, they've got the running game, they've got a good offensive line. They don't have receivers, so why don't you throw another tight end in the room and kind of load up on the big guys, on the beef. Big meaty men slapping meat, you know?
I don't hate it. You were on the verge of reading my mind there. When I mentioned trade up for the Ravens, I was thinking Terrace Marshall to go kind of fill out that wide receiver room, but Fryermuth is adding another weapon. They are a run-heavy offense the way that we saw the Patriots last year, and tight ends, ideally also help out in the run game. So Mark Andrews isn't that type of guy. I think Fryermuth, I'm not super familiar with him. I think he's more of that type of guy. So
great blocker.
They just extended Nick Boyle, who is their run blocking tight end. So yeah. I could definitely see them preferring a second receiving threat at tight end over like another wide receiver. Just philosophically.
Exactly. So you're up with New Orleans.
Hey, we appreciate you, Carlos. So I have New Orleans, and they're again another team that's in a little bit of a weird spot because they just had to remove so much from their defense to just get cap compliant, and they're looking to make a few signings here. They're talking to Richard Sherman, but I have no like they just kind of start needing to retool. For now, I'm going to address the glaring need that's corner. Greg Newsome going earlier kind of hurts them. I'm torn on if I want to reach a little bit for Eric Stokes or reach a little bit for one of these edge rushers. Because it's edge week, I'm going to reach for one of the edge rushers. Where is he? Joe Tryon. So this is the other guy that I mentioned earlier. He's a name that hasn't come up in our mock drafts yet. This is the first time he's going to go in the first round in our mocks. I don't think he's a first-round player. I think he is a day two guy, but he's the day two guy that intrigues me a little bit more than the rest here. I think he has more flashes than the rest of these guys. As I mentioned earlier in the night, I'm going to be a broken record with a lot of these guys that we're going to hit on after this draft, or if any of them go in the final four picks here. I think a lot of them are very similar, where they're okay athletes, not great athletes. They're okay technique-wise, not great technique-wise, or they're extremely athletic, but they show nothing technique-wise. I think Tryon's kind of in that middle ground there where he shows some athleticism and he shows some technique, and it flashes, and I get the appeal there, but it's just not there consistently enough. And I think he's someone that on day two, if you bet on him, you could end up with like the steal of the draft in like the middle, late second round, early third round, whatever. Round one, you're kind of baking in that upside into the capital that you're applying to him. So I don't love the pick. Since it's edge week, let's get another edge in here. And we haven't talked about him before. This is kind of my guy among the third tier edge rushers.
Yeah, before I traded back at 23 with you, that's who I was kind of. Hell yeah, India, sick. That's who I was kind of talking about with like the draft nicks and the guys at the major networks. Like Daniel Jeremiah loves Joe Tryon, and who am I to tell him that he's wrong? I think I think the flashes are there, and you said it perfectly. I won't drag it out too long, but he's a guy where if he hits, that's the steal of the draft. And if he doesn't, it's like, oh, you took a shot on a guy who showed like really good kind of fundamental skills and can do a lot of stuff. So I think he fits better as a 3-4, like outside linebacker kind of edge where he can also put his hand in the dirt, like with what the Patriots do in my mind, like a Judon type, somebody who he can have his hand in the dirt. He can stand up. Bring this up and let's talk about scheme fit.
Yeah. So we haven't brought this up before. If you guys aren't familiar with the Draft Network, I try to shout it out every week. That's what we use every week. I haven't brought this up because I like, I don't want to kind of leverage other people's opinions, like, straight up to bring it in. But where these are kind of guys that there's a lot of differing opinions on them because they're all, have strengths, significant strengths and weaknesses. I think this is a good way to bring up. You see here, I think that starting outside linebacker in a 3-4, stand him up, use it as athleticism to advantage works. And this is exactly what I was going to say too, though, where if you are running a 4-3, I think you can still take him, put a little weight on him, and stick his hand in the dirt. He has plenty of reps with his hand in the dirt. So he's that's part of the appeal to him. is that I think he's a little bit more versatile than some of the other guys that we haven't talked about yet. Where you can see what you want in him and kind of mold him to be there.
Yeah, I've said it like a million times throughout these. I think defenses, the two things that you're looking for are versatility and athleticism. He's got both of them. Like he can hand in the dirt, stand up. He could even kind of move back a little bit. He had a couple coverage snaps against Washington State. I believe it was in like 2019. He broke up like 4 passes. Like he's athletic. He can move around, but he can also put on some weight, and you can mold him to do whatever kind of fits your scheme. I don't necessarily think he'll be a guy who's pigeonholed into one spot. I think he can be molded into whatever you need him to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're getting towards the end here, though, and you got the Packers here at 29.
Yeah, so I think they either go receiver or tackle here. They're pretty well set on receivers. Not that they're all great, but they've got some depth. So I think they go Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan. He's a tackle, a little bit of a raw prospect, but he's got all of the intangibles that you look for, and maybe they can. I think he kind of reminds me of Tristan Wirfs last year, the guy who no one was completely sold on, fell to the back half in a first round that had like 5 or 6 tackles go, fell to the back half and ended up being the best one out of all of them. So Jalen Mayfield.
Okay. And then we come to the Bills. That's my pick. Last week I also picked for the Bills, and I forget which linebacker I took, but I took a linebacker. I think I might have gone Zaven Collins. And then the very next day they re-signed Matt Milano. So that's off the board now. We're looking at cornerback. Eric Stokes would be the pick if we go corner. We could, again, reach for another edge guy. That was the last one. I don't think that Tryon even, like, I wouldn't really love a team picking him in the first round. Like I mentioned with Phillips, like I get it because of the upside that he presents. I get it there, even though I personally like Tryon a little bit better. I wouldn't take either in the first round. I really wouldn't take Tryon in the first round. Or I would be more surprised with the team taking Tryon in the first round, I should say. I'm just going to jump back to this real quick because I really need to think this pick through. I would go Zaven Collins. We talked about it last week. If you missed it, you can go watch back. You're watching on Twitter, or Twitch, excuse me. So if you're watching on Twitch, you can go back watch our old one if you want to. I believe Zaven Collins went pick 30 when we picked for the Patriots at. I think we made a trade back last week. We picked at 19. We talked about Zaven Collins there. I think that he's the best Patriots fit at linebacker in this class. I think that Parsons is overall just better enough that he should be one on their board. But if you're looking at among the rest of that group, just the best fit, Zaven Collins is the guy there. I was a little bit lower on Nick Bolton. I think he's more of like a mid-day 2 prospect. How do you feel there, Keegan? Because I really need to think this through. So
yeah, so actually,
expand on that there.
I think Collins is LB2 for me. I think he's a good Patriots fit, like you said. In terms of Nick Bolton, I don't like Nick Bolton at all. I don't think he plays the 2021 NFL game. I think he plays a pretty good college game, and like he's a throwback linebacker, kind of like mid-2000s guy that'll work downhill, work in the middle, will not run outside of the hashes, or especially not the numbers. Like he's a guy who works downhill. He does not work side to side. I don't love Nick Bolton. But once Ryan does make his pick, I think Zaven Collins is the pick for Kansas City. So once you make your pick, we can just jump that in.
This might be like a trade out of the first round spot, to be honest. I'm trying to see who I own, or if you had anyone in mind. I think that a trade up for like a Terrace Marshall here makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to see who.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. 2 weeks ago, I had the Bills and I took a running back just because that's 30, 31, 32 are the perfect spot to take a running back in the first round. You get the 5th-year option, and those teams obviously have good rosters. They're set up for success. That's the Bills' biggest need. Whether or not you would want to take it in the first round, that's that's completely up to you. But there's no doubt that that's their biggest need.
Let's see. All right. I'm gonna look at this. I think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go something crazy real quick. Let's I need to see. I believe, if I'm not misremembering, the Vikings have a shitload of mid-round picks. They sure do. No second-round pick though. That makes it tough. All right, we're gonna have to back out of that. I was gonna say Adam Thielen's getting a little bit older. Let's pair the LSU guys, Justin Jefferson, Terrace Marshall, back together. and just have that wide receiver room set for the future. But no second round pick makes that tough. Let me try to identify one more team here, and if it doesn't work out, then we'll keep it moving. I could see maybe the Bengals coming back in. They're not typically a trade up team. We had the classic 3 wide receiver run, 6, 7, 8. I think they might end up stuck here. So I'm gonna go with we'll go Travis Etienne. We'll go Najee Harris. Najee's my guy. We haven't gotten to, I don't think we've talked about him yet. It's not running back week, so we won't go too in depth. And there's been some talk here, so this lets me address this. I love Najee Harris. I don't think that Najee Harris makes a ton of sense for the Patriots. He has some passing game chops, but as we talked about earlier tonight, you're looking to replace the pure pass catcher role, like the James White role in the room. You have Sony Michel as the big body running back. You have Damian Harris behind him as the big body running back. Michel may be out next year. He might have 2 years left if they pick up his option. I wouldn't pick up his option. They might. Damian Harris for sure has 2 years left because he wasn't the first round pick. There's no option for him. I don't think that you need to start looking at like that next big pure running back type guy this year. So I love Najee Harris. Would be terrified if he ends up in Buffalo. But that's I don't think the fit for the Patriots there is super there. As for the Bills, they don't really have that kind of pure rusher. Zach Moss didn't really flash last year too much. Devin Singletary is more of like a secondary type guy, change of pace back. Najee Harris would be terrifying next to Josh Allen.
Yeah, I don't like either one of their running backs. I don't think they have one that really fits what they want to do. Where they're pushing the ball downfield, they're not dinking and dunking or running on early downs. What was it in the AFC Championship? They threw like 19 straight times or something like that to open up the game.
Yeah,
they need somebody to hand the ball off to.
Mm-hmm.
They need someone. So Kansas City's up at 31. I would have taken a guard earlier, but after we started, they ended up signing former Bears guard Kyle Long, who's been out of the NFL for a year, but they signed him. He'll be opposite Joe Thuney. It's
interesting because they and Kyle Long has some tackle history, so in theory they could put him at tackle, but they cut their 2 offensive tackles in their center and then have brought in 2 guards so far to replenish the offensive line. It's a little interesting. It would almost be just fascinating if they signed 2 offensive guards that have tackle experience and then put them at tackle. Kyle Long on the left, Joe Thuney on the right, Joe Thuney on whatever they do.
Like you said, whatever they do with them, they filled 2 out of the 3 spots that are missing.
Right.
They released 3 guys that needed to fill those spots. They filled 2. It is a super reach if you take a tackle here. I don't think there's anybody close to a first rounder left. I don't think some of the first rounders that we took are close, but it's kind of the situation that those teams were put in. And they have a need at linebacker. So Zaven Collins is the pick. He's a first round pick. He needs to be. He's going in the first round. So I think he's the most logical pick here at 31 for the Chiefs.
All right, and then let's wrap this up here. I want to force one more edge, but they got to keep Shaq Barrett. The Bucs managed to keep everyone that they were going to lose, so they're really picking from a spot of luxury here. And I mean, they could still go edge, I suppose. Jason Pierre-Paul doesn't have too much longer to go. This is another classic trade out spot. Barmore, I like Barmore, but I mean, Vita Vea, they missed Vea most of this year. Vita Vea is a beast inside. He could be a Sue replacement. I don't.
The only problem is like Sue and Nunez Roches are probably out the door.
All right. You swayed me. Let's go with it. Let's go with Barmore here. You swayed me. Let's get this done and talk about a couple more edge guys before we get out of here. We'll fill in that kind of that 3 tech role with Barmore. I don't think that's a perfect spot for him, but they'll make it work. And that rounds up the draft. So let's just recap real quick. Trevor Lawrence going to go 1 first every single time until the draft where he goes 1 for real. Zach Wilson goes at 2. Carolina trades up for Justin Fields at 3. That trade was 8, 39, and a 2022 first for the 3rd overall pick with Miami. Atlanta took Penei Sewell after we couldn't negotiate a trade with the Patriots to get all the way up there. Rashawn Slater went to the Bengals after they lost out on Sewell. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and the Dolphins taking Smith after their trade down has been a popular 3 wide receiver run at 6, 7, 8 for us lately. And then the Patriots got up to 9 for Lance. If you guys missed that earlier, didn't get in time, this is the trade we ended up working out. Patriots got 9 and the 190th pick in the 6th round, and the Broncos got 15, 46, and 147. So they effectively got 15, 46, and a pick swap for pick 9. Patriots took Trey Lance, got their QB of the future there. Cowboys took the flashy Cowboys pick, and also a very good player that would just absolutely dominate their offense, make their offense very scary. Kyle Pitts. Giants had probably the reach of the draft at Gregory Rousseau at 11. 49ers took Patrick Surtain. First time that he's fallen to the 49ers at 12. Caleb Farley goes right off the board after the Chargers. Vikings fill in their interior offensive line with Elijah Harris-Hucker. Broncos get Micah Parsons to fall after their trade back. Cardinals take J.C. Horn, another popular pick. Edge 1 for, I think, both of us. Kwity Paye goes to 17 to the Raiders. Azeez Ojulari falls right behind him to the Dolphins. Mac Jones to Washington football team, Washington. Rashad Bateman, my guy, to the Bears at 20. Christian Darrisaw, Greg Newsome, Jalen Phillips go with the next 3 picks to the Colts, Titans, and Browns. The Browns made a little bit of a trade up there. Let's go look at what we gave up there. It wasn't too much. They traded with the Jets, and they gave up a 5th round, or they gave up their 3rd round pick, which is 91. They also have pick 89, so they took the advantage of the assets they have there. Got a 5th round pick back to go get their guy at edge. Tevin Jenkins fortifies the Steelers' offensive line. Trevon Moehrig goes to the Jaguars. After the trade back, young jock Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah goes to the Jets, kind of replace that Jamal Adams role. Pat Freiermuth, the Ravens copy the Patriots and go with that 2 tight ends duo. People forget the Patriots had to trade up in front of the Ravens to take both Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez in that draft, and they ended up taking Dennis Pitta and Ed Dixon. With those picks, they had the same idea in mind as the Patriots.
They always do
that draft, and the Patriots had to get in front of them and got the 2 better players out of that for a short time. But they take Freiermuth, go back to their 2 tight end ways there. Saints take Joe Tryon, first appearance in the 1st round for him. Same with Jalen Mayfield, who went to the Packers at 29. Same with Najee Harris at 30 to the Bills. Zaven Collins and Christian Barmore rounded out for the Super Bowl matchup, Chiefs and Buccaneers. Just catch up on the chat real quick. How long did who are you referencing when you say he? Are you talking about Cam? I think he had Steve Smith for like his first 4 years. I believe Steve Smith went to the Ravens in 2000.
I think it was only 2 because he was on that 14 team.
Let's see. Yep. So 2013. So Steve Smith was with Cam for 3 years, 11, 12, 13. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the first round. I think this is the most unique round that we've had so far. We still had some of the familiarities again with the wide receiver run, the quarterback run, but I think it got switched up again, which is nice here. Let's pull up the spreadsheet here, and we'll finish it off talking a couple guys that didn't get picked. Let's start with Joseph Osai, the edge out of Texas here.
Yeah, so I was just looking at that. And I was like, damn, I can't believe we missed Joseph Osai. I
didn't miss him personally. I'll get to thoughts in a second here.
Yeah, I missed him. I think he's right around 4 for me in terms of the edge guys. He's an effort player, and he's kind of a behemoth. Like this dude is built, and he's got a high motor, and he's effort based. He'll never quit on a play. A lot of his sacks a lot of coverage sacks, stuff like that. A guy that you want on your team. He reminds me of Dietrich Wise. He's a little bit stockier than Dietrich Wise, but like the kind of player that he is, the effort player, brings a little bit of everything to the team. Not necessarily a 1st round pick, but he might fall there or might end up there just because this isn't a super strong class.
Right. I like what you said a little bit with the Wise. He's someone, and the number that he wore, I believe it was in the 30s, like 36 or something like that.
46.
46, thank you. Yeah. The number that he wears helps us, but he looks like someone who looks like an undersized defensive tackle, but then he's out there moving like an edge. So right. The athleticism there, I get. The size I don't love. Again, he's someone that I don't think was super refined. The motor is high. You see him chasing down back from the backside on plays that are going far away from him, like every other play. So there's a lot to like from there. I don't love the value in round 1. He's someone, again, where you take him round 2. I don't love the upside for him either as much as some of the other guys. So if you take him like late round 2, and I think that you're getting a solid rotational guy at worst, and there's some starter upside to him, but I don't think there's like a star upside there, personally.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Let's go. Jason Owe is another one. Lacking Spags here is what let him fall, because I don't think Spags let Owe fall out of the first round a single time. But how do we feel about Owe?
I do not like Jason Owe as a player.
I don't love him either.
He just did, like, he doesn't show anything that gives me hope that he can, progress past what he is, which is throw him in there on third down, hope he can get to the quarterback, but 80 times out of 100 he's not, or like 80 times out of 87 times he's not getting there. He's right. I don't know. I don't like him as a player at all. I actually did that profile and I completely did something different. There was no pros for him, no cons. It's kind of like I have no idea what I'm watching.
He's the pure projection, because the athleticism is all there and the technique is just not at all.
Yeah, no,
you're like Danielle Hunter is a decent example of someone who had athleticism and not much production in college and then just boomed at the NFL level, but he was a third round pick. And if you watched him in college, you could see the upside there. It just wasn't translating in LSU's defense. I don't super see that, but there is that similar type of boom potential for Owe. You just don't take that in the first round. You probably don't take that in the second round either, to me.
Yeah, like if you've got a strong defensive line already and you've got a coach who kind of knows how to coach him up, I think a situation like New England would be like okay for him. Kind of, he'll be coached correctly in New England. It's whether or not he's going to turn that into something. Mm-hmm. I think it's written in there. The system fit for him more than anybody else in terms of the edge rushers is going to dictate whether or not he's getting paid a second contract or not.
Yeah. And GoldenEye and YKBS, I see your questions in the chat. We're going to get to them in just 2 seconds. There's 2 more guys I want to touch on real quick. We don't have to go quite as deep as we just did with Osai and Owe. Those were the guys we drafted already. Russo, Pay, Phillips, Ojulari, Tryon, and then Osai and Owe. That's kind of like my first, second, third tier guys there. I think those are the guys that you should see going, or you will see going in the first round. You should see going on day 2 at some point. That's kind of those are the 7 for me that I think are a bit above the rest. I didn't get to Carlos Basham. I know some people like him in that range. Do you have any thoughts on him, or should we kind of skip over him? I didn't get to him personally.
I love Carlos Basham. He's a great run defender. They played Syracuse last year. Syracuse did not run the ball at him the entire game. That's the kind of edge defender that you're talking about. They wouldn't run at him because they knew it wasn't happening. I mean, It's Syracuse football, so like nothing's really happening anyways, but they wouldn't run the ball to him. He shows flashes where he can, I wouldn't say he was awful in 2020. That team was very bad that he was on. That Wake Forest defense was horrible. He'll have flashes where he'll go get the quarterback like 2 or 3 times. He's a TFL monster. Like, I can't say enough good things about him as a run defender. So if you're looking for a pure run defender, he's perfect.
I was gonna say, just reading this, and I'm gonna come back to this in a second because this is a good tie-in. But there's one more guy that I want to get to, and I think it would be weird to just kind of hop into him at the end here. So let's jump back to Basham in a second, and then Quincy Roche, just because I mentioned him earlier. When you look at this season and the games that I watched of Jalen Phillips, Quincy Roche was basically doing the same things as Phillips. He's not as athletic. He doesn't have the pedigree. He's undersized. You could argue that he should be someone that played on like a Teddy Bruschi, Mike Vrabel type, where they played on the line in college and then they moved to off ball as a situational pass rusher at the NFL level, just because he's so undersized. But I liked what I saw from him. He's athletic. The wingspan is pretty big for his size, and you're looking at someone who, when you're watching Miami, he arguably looked more impressive this year as a transfer in than Greg Russo looked last year, and Greg Russo was going to be a top 10 pick. I'm not advocating for that from Roche. I think he's a good late end of day 2, early day 3 guy that, again, you kind of figure out where to go with him. Off ball is probably the move. But do you have any significant thoughts on Roche?
He's an off-ball linebacker. He's not an edge guy. He's listed as an edge guy, but that's not where he's going to play at the next level.
Yeah, but I think that the upside's there with his athleticism and his ability. You can see 45 games, 30.5 career sacks, 54 tackles for loss. 8 forced fumbles as an undersized pass rusher. Like that's the type of guy. Again, you see Teddy Bruschi, you see Mike Vrabel. There are more recent ones, but in terms of Patriots, that's what sticks out. Like that's the type of guy that you can see transitioning to make an impact as a situational stand-up pass rusher and just off-ball linebacker in general. You take a mid-round pickup with him, you spend a year or two coaching him up, and then you can really see the benefits. He is older, as YKBS just saying, at 23. He was a transfer to Miami this year. Forget where he came from, to be honest, but he's someone that I think it would be an intriguing Patriots option just because of the versatility he could provide. But back to Basham here. This hits on a couple of questions that came in the chat. I think that you just look, again, I didn't get to see him, but you look at this physical profile from him. This screams like a 4 or 3-4 5 tech that occasionally moves over and stands up. It also screams this screams like a Dietrich Wise replacement if Dietrich Wise didn't get re-signed. Obviously he did. But where the Patriots are kind of transitioning, I think, to more of a three down lineman set. And let me find the question that popped up here that I wanted to relay into this. Given we have Judon, Uche, and Winovich with the pass look for larger defensive end, like plus 280 pounds, do you think? That's Basham. That's Dietrich Wise. Wise's contract kind of precludes the need. Henry Anderson signing precludes the need. But if they're going to go defensive end, I think that's the type of guy that they're going to go for. 3 down linemen. You have 2 5 techs, maybe a 1 5 tech on one side, maybe more of a 7 tech on the other side where they line up between the tight end and the tackle instead of the tackle and the guard. But these bigger guys that are going to be good against the run and kind of more power pass rushers are the type of guys that you should expect to see the Patriots target in the draft if they do. Because letting Adam Butler go, bringing in Godshaw, Judon, Henry Anderson, the interest in Raheem Nunez-Roches, this just screams a team that's going more into like a 3-4, 3-3-5, 3-2-6 sets versus the 4 down linemen that we've been seeing a lot the past handful of years. Yeah,
if you look at some of the guys they have on the roster, like Bill Murray, Nick Thurman, Akeem Spence, Michael Barnett, I think, like those guys probably aren't making this roster if we're being totally honest. And they've got 3 or 4 big defensive tackles that are going to play in the middle, like Bo Allen and Godshaw. So I think Basham, if they're going to pick anybody to play on the defensive line in this draft, it's going to be Basham.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, I didn't get to him. I didn't know much about him, but reading this and looking at the size that he has, this is the type of prospect that I would expect, and I wish I got to him because now that the Patriots plan has like pretty clearly come into place, this is absolutely someone that I would consider Patriots target. A couple more questions that we'll get to, and then we'll get out of here. This has been the longest stream that we've done. There was the most to talk about this week, of course, so makes sense. We appreciate you guys hanging out throughout this whole time. Let's hit this one. There's a scenario where J.C. Jackson was signed away by another team and the Patriots received a second-round pick. Would be worth using that to trade higher and select Wilson or Fields over Lance. I still don't think J.C. Jackson gets away, personally. I think that the second-round tender was a surprise, and it opens up the door for a team to go balls in with J.C. Jackson, and then you get the second-round pick. But I think the idea here is we can match just about anything. We might get him a little bit cheaper than if we were just going to negotiate a deal with him next year. And if not, then we have him a little bit cheaper this year. I think it's kind of just daring teams to come take him from them. It's a bit scary because I don't want a team to come take him from him, but I think realistically he's still going to be here.
Yeah, I think it gives Bill an excuse to sign him to a big money deal and then trade away Stephon Gilmore. Right. I think that's more what that is.
I could see that too. And then that's same GoldenEye, similar question, same guy asking the question, who would you pick a cornerback in the second round if J.C. Jackson is snatched away? So this pick is using the sacrifice second rounder. I don't think, and we'll relay this question. We'll tie in, if Gilmore is traded, same type of deal. You would hope you get a second, realistically might be a third. In the second round, I think Eric Stokes is the guy right now among the second round corners. He just showed out at the pro day today at Georgia, ran like a 4.25, I believe. I don't necessarily think that they would trade away a corner to just use that pick on another corner. That's typically not what they do. They fill it in, with in other spots. And they're still deep enough at corner 4 now that you don't necessarily need to. But if you're looking at second round corners, Eric Stokes is probably the guy.
Yeah, if Newsome doesn't sneak into the first round, I think Newsome's like a perfect fit. But that's I
would have a real hard time seeing him get past 33 if he made
exactly. I was gonna say he's a like top 3-4 picks in the second round. So you would have to trade Gilmore to like Cincinnati and have them give up a second round pick or something like that, which won't happen, but that would have to be the scenario.
And then last question here from GoldenEye. 2021 first, 21 22nd, and 2022 second. So, and just a quick clarification, J.C. Jackson compensation would come in the 2021 season. So if the Jaguars sign J.C. Jackson and we let him walk, we have the 33rd overall pick this year. There were some mixed reports. I know Zolak and Bertrand got this wrong live today on the air, but if J.C. Jackson were to be signed away, right. If J.C. Jackson were to be signed away, that pick comes in this year, not 2022. But this type of package for fourth, I think it's a little light. We were talking about it at the beginning of the night. I think you probably need to give up 2 firsts to go from 15 to 4, and then also a second or a third in order to get up to 4. I think this is a little bit light there. Last question, then we'll get out of here. Do you have any Osa Odigizua thoughts? My only thought, because I didn't get to him, is Owa Odigizua was my literal first ever draft crush. 2014 was the first year I started doing draft stuff. He was the first guy that I ever watched, so naturally I fell in love with him because he was the first guy that I ever watched. Injuries derailed his career, but just on that principle, I'm all in on Osa Odigizua.
Yeah, I think he's pretty good. He's a kind of a developmental guy. I don't think anybody knows where he's going to play at the next level, like whether or not he's a defensive tackle, a 3-tech, or he'll have. I think at his size, he'll have to kind of move out a little bit, like 4-eye maybe in a 3-4 defense. I don't think he really fits. I don't really think he fits what the Patriots are going to be looking to do at the back half of the draft, where he would be drafted. In my eyes, he's a day 3 pick. I think day 3 is pretty well reserved for offensive linemen, linebackers, and talent, like speed at whatever position, just fast guys. That's kind of what they do. So I don't know if necessarily he's a fit in New England, but he's a good player who, scheme fit. If it works out, he'll have a good couple of years.
Yeah. All right, that's gonna do it for us, guys. Just under 2 hours. Let's get out of here. And Camp Sample. Yeah, sorry, Studio Jim. We're running out of time here, but Camp Sample. Studio Jim likes him as like an early day 3 pick. You like him too? Just real quick, 2 sentences there.
I have I don't know if I have an opinion. I don't want to talk out of school. So
yeah, I just as a little bit older, life gets busier. I pretty much just focus on Patriots guys after they're drafted, and before the draft, I focus on round 1, round 2 type guys. So I probably won't have thoughts on Sample unless he goes to the Patriots. Oh.
Curtis Samuel is signing with the Washington football team.
He sure is. I like that a lot for them. Him and Terry McLaurin together is a lot of fun. I think Nelson Aguilar kind of precluded the Curtis Samuel idea here. And Will Fuller likely, even though I like Will Fuller better than both of them. I think a guy like Juju, Marvin Jones is gone, but Marvin Jones would have made sense too. If they're going to go one more wide receiver, you're kind of going to look at more of that more reliable intermediate game route runner, wins at the catch point versus the gadget or deep threat speed guy like Curtis Samuel or Will Fuller, because I think Nelson Aguilar kind of fills that role in terms of the deep threat, and Jonnu Smith kind of fills that gadget role. So I don't think Samuel makes sense for the Patriots anymore, but it is a bummer seeing him go somewhere else.
Yeah, just so I can get it out here and everybody knows, I think Juju is if they're going to sign another receiver, I think Juju's the guy. And it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to watch it.
If you take the wide receivers as like a top 5 group of Galladay, Samuel, Fuller, Corey Davis, and Juju was my 5th option there. But given how this played out, Corey Davis would have jumped up there. He's not available anymore. Juju's my top guy, above Curtis Samuel, who's no longer here, above Will Fuller. I think he makes the most sense for this team at this point, even though he's so good. I like him a little bit less.
So good for that slot role, I think. It's just perfect. Him and Amon-Ra St. Brown,
he'd be the safety blanket there, as Kendrick Bourne is would slot in as the 3rd option at wide receiver. Nelson Aguilar as the deep threat, kind of the more of the chunk play guy. Juju would be the safety net, and then you have the 2 tight ends, eating in whatever role. I think that would be just absolutely disgusting. Completely new weapon group, but it'd be nasty. All right, guys, that's really going to do it for us, though. Trey Lance is a New England Patriot as of Pat's Pulpit Mock Draft Show, episode 4. We trade up to 9 to get him. We give up a first round pick this year, a second round pick this year, and a fifth round pick. Get a sixth round pick back. Not too bad when you're getting your QB of the future. We appreciate you guys hanging out. If there's any more big Patriots moves, we'll be doing emergency streams throughout the week. Not necessarily us two, but Pat's Pulpit as a whole. So if you see Samuel for 11 million AAV, you're looking at Nelson Aguilar AAV. That's my nitpick with the Nelson Aguilar is the wide receiver. I wonder if almost they misjudged how the wide receiver market was going to play out a little bit, or if they just really loved Aguilar. I'd hope the latter than the former. My guess is more of the former. But let's get out of here. It's been 2 hours. If any more big moves are being made, someone at the Pets Pulpit team will get up an emergency stream. If not, though, we will be back next Wednesday at 6 p.m. I don't know what position group we're going to be doing, but I think we might be looking at a potential first 2-round mock draft. I think that might be on the plan. So keep an eye out for what we decide to do. We'll definitely get it out on Twitter, and we'll see you guys next week at 6. Next Wednesday at 6. Thanks, Keegan.